This conference
So my
will
name
now
is
be recorded.
Gargi Rakshit, and I'm part of the learning and development team of one of the leading IT companies of India. It's a global IT company, and when Amitabh approached me to kind of have an interactive session with you guys, I was actually not very sure what to present. And I was also too much busy with dealing with this new normal of working from home. But then I thought, since you guys are at the threshold of joining the corporate world, why not share with you my 2 cents about how the corporate world will be impacted by HR as a function in times to come. So, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you very warmly to this session. A couple of things that I want to kind of put up very straight, that I am no expert in this field. I think each one of us, we have our own learning curve. I have been in the corporate world for the last 17 years, and hence maybe I'm few steps ahead of you guys, just in case, in context of exposure and experience. But these fields of business or management, it's so dynamic that it keeps on changing every few years, and with newer occurrences like COVID, lot of dynamisms will evolve. So we are all eternal students of management and the way we run. Okay, so there are a lot of disturbances. May I request all of you to go on mute?
Yeah, all of you, please mute your mic. I am also doing that.
Sure. Thanks, Amitabh. So like I was saying that it's not only about me sharing my experience, because we are all learning. And this field of management is so dynamic that what was pertinent maybe 5 years back would become redundant now, because newer technology, newer work norms will come into place. Now, I would want this session to be interactive. So if you have any point to make, or if you want to kind of add some comments, I would encourage you to unmute yourself and do contribute. I don't want this to be a monologue, because it's clearly not a classroom lecture. That's not how adults learn. Adults learn only through participation. So that's what I would encourage each one of you to do, actively do. So does that sound okay? Amitabh, is this fine? I mean, can we have an interactive session? Okay, am I audible? Amitabh, can you hear me?
Sorry, my mic was muted, so I was talking, but you were not able to hear.
Okay,
So all the students, please actually ask questions whenever you want, because it is a great opportunity you are having. Because all the time you will not be getting Gargi in this kind of platform. So please ask questions and take this opportunity.
Right, thank you. So Amitabh, you just confirm whether my screen is still visible.
Yes, your screen is visible.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, so when we think about the word human resource management, what really comes to your mind? What do you think an HR person's responsibilities are? And don't think too much, because I guess you guys have already gone through a lot of theories, a lot of books. You have been exposed to a lot of these practices. So I'm sure you have a fair idea about the responsibilities of a human resource professional. So what do you think? What comes to your mind?
Hello, ma'am. This is Sujoy here. Hello. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, please.
Ma'am, actually, your question answer is HR is related to recruiting, selecting, performance appraisal, and compensation management. These are the things basically HR of the organization is take care.
Very, very true. So recruitment, performance management, compensation benefits. Anything else?
Hi, ma'am. This is Raju Samazdar.
Yes, please.
How the manager fully utilize the resources of the organization.
How the manager fully utilizes the resources. Okay. So we'll ponder over it. But the manager can be anyone, right? But here I'm particularly asking for a human resource manager. So your fellow classmate
Yeah,
said that it's about recruitment, performance, compensation benefits. Are there any more tenets of responsibilities for a human resource manager?
Good morning, ma'am. I'm Shreya
Yes,
Chakraborty.
yes,
I
Shreya.
think public relations is very important for a human resource manager.
Public relations, okay. Maybe internal stakeholder management is important because most companies have very dedicated communication and PR teams which take care of public relations. But you're right, to some extent the internal stakeholders need to be informed or communicated, and that's where HR plays a very important role. Right, right. So, uh, so if you just see the responsibilities of just huh, of human resource management, it's predominantly what most of you said. It's basically, if you can say that, it is from the entry to the exit of an employee, whatever needs to be done to make that person get onboarded, to make that person learn what is to be done, to make that person engaged in the in the day-to-day work, to appraise that person, to give them feedback, to ensure that the person is getting is compensated in the right way. If there are any compliance or legal kind of issues, HR department steps in to kind of take care of those things. So it's this whole gamut of activities which are part of the human resource responsibilities of a human resource manager. So I'm sure you know all these things, right? So I'm not spending much time here. Now, having said that, what do you think is the difference between human resource management and talent management? Did you hear the term talent management? Do you think there is on the first place any difference between a human resource management and a talent management? Anyone, feel
Actually, all
free
the
to
students,
answer.
please, tell whatever comes in your mind. You don't have to think that whether it is right or wrong, because it is a learning
Very
session.
true.
If you don't know, that is okay. But talk.
Yes, yes, I appreciate that, Amitabh. Don't think too much. I'm sure you guys have enough of exposure. From there, whatever comes to your mind, you can just share, because like Amitabh said, it's a session where we all intend to learn something new. So let me repeat my question. Do you think there is any difference between human resource management and talent management?
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, yes, please.
Sujoy. Actually, ma'am, talent management is something organization looking for the human capital. That's mean the talented skill, kind of like hard skill, soft skill, human required for the organization. And HR basically is related to, that's already I said you, that's requirement for the organization as the human as well, the employee. So talent management is basically it's oriented to skill management, as I
So
know my.
we Okay, great effort, Shujoy. I must appreciate. Yes, talent management has got a lot of things to do with skills, but that's not all. Any other comment? Any other thought? Anything that's coming to your mind?
Hi, ma'am. This is Angana Datta. And I
Yes.
feel that talent management is about succession of a plan, alignment of leadership, or recruiting and hiring, uh, engaging employees, and identifying jobs and attracting for certain jobs, uh, promotion, rotation. This can be uh, the phases of talent management, I feel.
So Angana, you have made my life very easy. I think you guys know everything. We can wrap up this session actually. But fantastic response, Angana. You actually nailed it. So talent management. So let me first tell you the difference between talent management and uh, and HR. Talent management and HR or human resource management, though they are used interchangeably in most organizations, particularly in India, technically talent management is a subset of human resource management, because human resource management is an ocean. There you have recruitment, you have onboarding, you have talent development, you have engaging, you have legal and compliance, you have exit, you have the compensation benefit. It's an ocean. Whereas talent management is a business strategy that enables the organizations to attract, recruit, develop, deploy, evaluate, as well as retain their top skills or the top talents. So talent management, though it is facilitated through the HR professionals, it is not just an HR function, if you ask me. It is actually the collective responsibilities of the managers, the leaders, the coaches, the HR leaders. All these, it's a collective responsibilities of the organization to nurture talent. So could I make the difference clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Great. Now see, human resource as a function itself has evolved a lot, and it has transformed a lot from just being a mere administrator where people used to do payrolls and used to handle, say, legal and compliance and all those things. Today, human resource in a matured organization has come a long way from being an enabler where they helped resources do their functions well. Today, human resource is actually looked upon more as a business partner. Now, how is it? How are we looked upon as a business partner? The thing is that today human resource is embedded in business. The human resource leaders are partnering with the line leaders. They're partnering with the executives and are offering them advice on how to effectively manage talent. Because let's understand, the human resource responsibilities do not end with just getting the talent in. The human resource has to work continuously and intuitively with the leaders to keep the talent engaged, to keep the talent invested in his or her job so that he or she performs optimally. And that's just not the responsibilities of the manager, but where the human resource managers, they bring in their expertise and work in tandem with the business manager or business leader to make that talent deliver its best. So today, an HR is not merely an administrator, because trust me, all these admin jobs like payrolls and legal and compliance, they are either outsourced or there are fantastic softwares which are available, and these very menial jobs are going to be replaced, by through automation, or they are going to be outsourced, or they are going to be replaced by softwares. So as a human resource manager, we need to think, how do we keep on adding value to business? Because business believes in continuum, right? So there should not be any dearth of resources, there should not be any dearth of talent. Once the talent comes in, how do we quickly make that person productive? How do we make that person engaged enough so that he or she takes on newer responsibilities? These are certain things that today's HR professional works alongside the business leaders, and that's why they are able business partners today and not just enablers or administrators. So human resource as a function has come a long way from being just order takers or just service providers to trusted business partners or consultants. Now, this movement or this evolution or this transformation from being an administrator to that of a business partner, do you think this is a challenge or an opportunity?
I think, ma'am, it's a challenge.
Okay, so if you think it's a challenge, let me know why.
Because as a administrator, the HR, she has to be a business partner, and this is I think not an easy task, because once a HR hire any employee, and the HR has to nurture that employee very clearly, so that this employee performance will be good. So I think this is the long way and gap between the administrator and business partner. So I think this is really a challenging situation that HR has to challenge with the employees, so that they convert administrator to business partner.
No, so I think, okay, let me just clarify. Here we are not talking about an HR moving from an administrator role to a business partner. This evolution has already taken place. So maybe 15 years back, maybe HR professionals were looked upon more like administrators or order takers. Like, for example, business leader will come and say, okay, I would need 10 resources, line up the interviews and ensure that they're onboarded. So what the HR people used to do is they used to take the order, reach out to certain sources to get those candidates, negotiate their compensation benefits and other terms and conditions, ensure that they were onboarded, and then that's it. Their role used to get over. And on a monthly basis, they used to get involved in their payrolls and other compliance things. Now, that was maybe 15 years back, where HR used to be an administrator. Now, over the years, their roles have evolved from just being an administrator to becoming an enabler, where HR had a say not only in terms of recruitment, but also in terms of where can I recruit, which source will work best, what kind of incentive should I give to an employee so that he sticks with us. Now that is the enabling role, which perhaps was existing till maybe 2 to 3 years back. Today or in the future, and HR's role will not be just of an administrator or an enabler. It will become that of a business partner, where the HR manager will work in tandem with the business leader to ensure that human resources are optimally utilized. So today, a business leader cannot come to an HR manager and say, okay, I need 10 managers. The HR manager will ask him back saying that, why do you need new resources? And why can't you repurpose the existing resources? So the existing resources will then be evaluated to see whether they have the skills to cater to the new requirement. So are you getting my point? It's not like HR professionals are now just mere order takers. We have a say in the company's strategic decisions, and that's why we are looked upon as consultants and not just service providers. So could I make that difference clear?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
Okay, so now I am again posing my question. Is this a challenge or is this an opportunity?
Ma'am, this is Angana. I feel that it works both ways. It is challenge and opportunity.
Okay,
Um,
so if you think it's a challenge, Angana, why do you think so? And why do you think it's an opportunity?
Challenge because the field has become vast because it was limited 15 years back, and you have to work more in different type of roles, uh, which makes you more challenging to do certain jobs. And this is opportunity because you get to learn so many new things, and which when you get the involvement in certain job, and you love your role, then you work harder. So this is opportunity for betterment in future.
Right, Angana. You're right. So let me just clarify. You are absolutely right when you said that it's a challenge as well as an opportunity for us. No challenge because now we do not have just set KRAs to meet, you know, which was very easy to meet maybe 15 years back, that I had to onboard 10 people, I had to retain 8 people, I had to do exit interviews of 2 people. It was very, very transactional, hence it was easy. Today, it's a challenge because we have to think on our feet. It's not like we have stretched, very, very straight cut KRAs to meet. We have to continuously evolve. We have to continuously expose ourselves to different best practices, to bring that on the table, share it with business leaders, saying that, hey, you know what? These companies or our competitors or our other industries are doing this kind of things and they are getting a lot of results. Why don't we bring in this kind of practices in our organization? So it's a challenge because we need to get more involved. It's no longer just a transactional role. It's a very, very strategic role. And it's an opportunity because we can now proudly say that we are no longer support functions. We are as important as a line function. Because just like a business leader impacts the revenue, similarly, we have a role to play in impacting revenue. Because think about it. If the business leader tells me that I need to bring in 10 people from outside, and I, as a HR professional, tells him that, look, we don't need to bring 10 people from outside. We already have this kind of skills available within the organization, and I will help you look out for those people. And instead of 10, we could actually repurpose 6 people from within, and we had to only hire 4 people from outside. Do you think the HR professional in this scenario has impacted the revenue? Do you think the HR professional has impacted the cost, the revenue, the profit and loss or balance sheet? Come on, you can say no, you can say yes. I would love to know, what do you think, the role that the HR manager has played. Anyone? Okay, Angana,
Ma'am, I feel like this is job of people from a finance background. This is not something which HR can do. That is my personal opinion. I have no idea about this.
okay, no, so that's where I want you to think again. It's not the role of a finance manager. The finance manager will not know what kind of skills that are existing within the organization. It's the HR professional, it's the HR manager who would know that within my span, what kind of employees are there, what are their educational qualification, what kind of experience do they have, what kind of exposure do they have. And that's why I would be well aware of the existing internal skills rather than a finance manager. And hence, I can very confidently go back to the business manager saying that, you know what, sir, you don't need, we don't need to recruit all the 10 people. We already have people of the skill sets. Okay, let me give an example. Say people are asking for resources with a certain Python skill. Say it's an IT skill, right? And there are people who have already done those kind of skilling, but a finance manager will not know, a business manager may not know. But as an HR manager, since I have the skill repository, I would know that there are already 5 people or 6 people within the organization who have the Python skill. So instead of recruiting from outside, why don't I utilize these people into this new project? As a result, what is happening is, since I'm not hiring from outside, I'm straight away saving the cost of 6 people from hiring outside. So that's a direct impact on the company's bottom line. And so today, HR is not just a service provider or a support function. We are also working as a line function. Is it making sense, guys? This
Yes, ma'am.
evolution or the transformation of HR?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So what I would want you guys to think, and since I'm telling this because you guys are going to join the corporate world very soon, do not, one of the major drawbacks that I've seen in the HR professionals is we continuously think that we are support staffs, and we only think that, well, as an HR we can only do this much. No, today we actually handle the most difficult resource, that is human resource, right? And we have data on human resource, so we have that powerful magic stick in our hand, and we can make a difference by thinking that, well, I have a role to play in the company's bottom line as well as top line. So don't look at yourselves as just administrator or enabler. Start looking yourselves as a business partner. Position yourself to the business leaders that I can make a difference to your business by getting you the right kind of people, by stopping you from unnecessary hiring, by helping you retain the right kind of resources, by engaging the right kind of resources in the right kind of project. So this evolution or transformation of HR should first happen in our mind. We should start looking ourselves as business partners or consultants, because the world has started looking at us as business partners and consultants. Making sense, guys? Do you think this evolution is making sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, if that's making sense, then let's just do some reality check. Today, there is hardly any organization that has not been disrupted by change. So in the last 5 years, can you give me some of the disruptions which have happened in the way business is getting done? Think about different industries. What are the kind of changes or disruptions have you seen? No change? Have you not seen any kind of change?
Ma'am, in HR, there are a lot of new tools have been launched.
I'm not talking about HR. I'm talking about different industries per se, the way a business gets done.
Neha, Gargi is talking about business process changes, transformation. So we can talk about that.
Okay.
There are so many different industries. Okay, let me give you examples so that that can kind of tickle your brain. So we have the consumer business. We have the I would say the food business. We have businesses like travel and tourism. So all these are different industries. Now, do you think there have been disruptions in these industries in the last 5 years? Okay, last.
You can talk about this. You are making regular basis videos on the business process changes and the disruption. So you can talk about those examples also. I mean, how the business process are getting changed.
So don't think from the HR perspective, okay? Think from the business perspective. That as a common person, what kind of changes have I seen? Do you see the way you eat outside? Has that changed in the last 5 years?
Yeah, ma'am. Because now home deliveries apps are many more available right now. So every time
Correct. So
out from our
correct,
home,
correct,
so
correct.
there
So
are
we are stepping outside our homes less, and we are ordering food more, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. How about retail industry?
I mean, retail grocery is also like that. Like the Grofers, Big Baskets, they are also offering home delivery more right now. So we don't need to step out from our home.
Correct.
Yes,
So
by the
so there was a time, maybe 5 years back when the Saturdays and Sundays in a big bazaar or a Spencer used to be a
Yeah,
nightmare because you had to
yeah,
just stand in queues, right?
yeah,
Long
exactly.
queues, and
Yeah,
maybe it used to take almost an hour for you to get your bill and pack your stuff and come out of the mall.
yeah,
Today, just at the click of a button or maybe tap of your mobile, you are
yeah.
actually placing orders and getting. So don't you think it's a disruption?
Yeah, ma'am, exactly. And I think, ma'am, another point I want to add on that is just because from last 4 5 years, the payment method, payment gateways have also changed. Like
Oh, yes,
Paytm,
yes, big way. Yes,
like
yes.
Paytm wallet
Tell us
was
more
not
about it.
there. Yeah, like 3 4 years ago, wallets are not available. So right now we are so much into wallets, Paytms, and payment gateway methods are very much helpful for that also. Online banking.
Absolutely, and it's a total disruption. And so today, the credit card companies are actually crying. There was a
Yeah,
time, maybe 10 years back, when getting a credit card was a big achievement. I remember when I got my
yeah,
first credit card because I was working for a big corporate house, and I got it for free. Some of my friends were very jealous of me, saying that you got a free credit card and we have to pay, the annual charges for the credit card. Today,
yeah,
even if you are given free, we barely take credit cards, right? Because the
yeah,
payment gateways and payment methodologies have changed. So thank you so much. That's a wonderful disruption, if you ask me.
yeah,
Talk
exactly.
Uh,
about
Very
more.
much.
Tell us more.
Ma'am, may I add something?
Yes, yes, please.
Yeah, I feel that another challenge faced by industry today is over tourism. Advancements in mobile app technology have made it easier to plan trips, booking hotels, travel the whole world conveniently. So today we see that travel apps like GoIbibo and others, Ola. No, sorry, I can't remember those names. So
Oyo
those
rooms you're
apps,
talking about?
yeah, sorry, yeah, Oyo Rooms and GoIbibo, Make My Trip. These are the apps which play an integral role in every stage of planning trips that we made in our everyday life. Um, a train that shows no sign of showing down. So globally, this is effective, and I feel that it has become very easier for us to reach the whole world in a few seconds. So this has changed a lot in few years.
Correct. So if you look at the gamut of industries which have been impacted by these disruptions, you just look at any industry and it has been affected. Today,
Yeah,
there are products which are getting directly launched online. They are not even available in the retail stores. They are directly available in the e-tail stores, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so if you ask me, these are some of the reasons why business has been disrupted in the last few years. One most important thing is the technology change.
Yeah.
Second one is regulatory changes. There would be, so today, one of the, so technology change, I'm not talking about it anymore because, enough of examples have been shared where we know that, the way we were buying, the way we were paying, the way we were traveling, everything got disrupted because of technology, and our life has become very convenient. So as a result of these technology disruptions, many companies actually have gone out of business. Think about those travel agents. We don't go to travel agents anymore, right? Today, we have the best of travel aggregators at our fingertips, and we just need to kind of go to a trip advisor, do your own research, see what kind of hotels will fit your budget, and you book it directly. You don't have to go through travel agents. So many travel agents are out of business because of this technology advancement. Similarly, regulatory changes will also play a very important part, because see, these big tech companies like say Google, Facebook, there is this continuous, we have this continuous, I would say, threat of our data being compromised. So Google, for example, knows everything that's going on in our lives, right? Starting from when we are waking up to what we are buying to where are we going. It's very spooky at times, when all of a sudden Google will give you that information that you have been to this place 5 years back, and I myself won't remember, right? So Google has details of each and every step of our lives, which is very scary. And if this data gets compromised, then we will become more vulnerable. So a lot of regulatory changes are being brought in. Companies like Google, companies like Amazon, companies like Facebook, which have a lot of personal data, are being questioned, and very soon, a lot of strict rules will come in.
Okay.
Right?
And ma'am, another thing is e-learning. We don't buy books much nowadays, so universities across the globe has taken resort to online education, which has led a massive increase in using the applications like Zoom, Cisco, GoToMeetings. These are the apps we use, and there are many sites which we follow being a student to get information and gather information. Yeah, Google is very essential, and there are other apps which we can follow to get any kind of information. So this is very easier for us, not taking books everywhere, 5 or 6 big fat books, but as we have mobile phone, we can grab the knowledge easily. So
Very
in this
true. Very true.
generation, we do that.
Correct. And so the concept of education, concept of library, concept of data archiving has completely changed. And these disruptions have come mainly because of tech changes, because of regulatory changes, and because of competition. There was a time when big companies were a threat to small companies. Today, small companies are even bigger threats to bigger companies, because small companies are very innovative, they're agile, they're coming up with different types of solutions which are putting bigger companies out of their job. You think about how Big Basket is gradually nudging Big Bazaar out of its comfort zone. So Big Bazaar has to either think differently and come up with a different business model, or maybe gradually make way for Big Basket. So these are the the realities of business, and that's why we also have some realities from the HR perspective. So because of these business disruptions, what we need now is the demand for skill specialization. Today, if you have a niche skill, like say an automation skill or a data analytics skill, you are hot property. There are companies who would be vying for your attention and would be kind of fighting among themselves to get you onboarded. Similarly, another reality is borderless workplace. Borderless workplace means today we can work from anywhere, because most of the companies are now global. Today, sitting in India, I manage a team which is spread across 4 different continents. So it's completely the HR connects and everything has to be so flexible that it will cater to this borderless workplace. The other
Yeah.
important change is the new breed of leaders, because see, there are different kinds of generations which are involved in workplace. Today we have leaders who are in their maybe early 30s or late 30s or early 40s who are actually managing companies. You look at Mark Zuckerberg. You look at in India, you look at Baiji Ravindran. They are all in their 30s and they are managing billion-dollar companies. So this new breed of leaders will come up with new challenges as well as their new thought process. So HR has to adapt to these kind of these kind of thought processes. The other reality is the competitive talent marketplace. Like I said, the skilled marketplace is so competitive that think about companies like Google. They are offering jobs to students who are not even adults, people who are say 15 years, 16 years, because they are so good with coding. They are self-taught. They have learned coding so well that Google is ready to pay crores of rupees for their expertise. And they are not even waiting for this person to turn an adult because they don't want to let go this talent. So this talent marketplace has become very, very competitive. And the fifth reality, which I think every HR person should understand, is agility. Can you tell me what is agility? What do you think is agility? Have you heard this term, agility?
Yeah, agility means doing something quickly or fast.
Correct, correct. So as HR professionals, we need to keep pace with business changes. If business is getting disrupted, we need to also keep pace with it. So we as HR professionals can't think that, okay, so we'll wait and watch, let's see how this kind of shapes up, then we will take a decision. Gone are those days. Just like business is transforming, similarly as HR professionals, we need to be very, very agile in our thoughts, in bringing out new strategies, in rolling out new people-centric plans. So agility is another very, very important tenet of this new HR ecosystem. So any question on this?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
So are we? Am I making sense so far, so long?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay. Now, having understood some of the disruptions that is happening in the HR space, let us see some, some talent realities. Now, I call this the 4G effect of workplace. You know what is 4G? It's
No.
not the network 4G, but it's a very unique timeline where 4 different diverse generations are working in today's workspace. So we have the baby boomers who were born between say 1946 to 1964, who are almost at the at the verge of retirement, but they still form a considerable amount of workforce. We have the Gen X, which are people who are born between 1965 to 1980. Now the Gen X are the ones who are actually they have brought in a lot of new ideas like work-life balance. They are self-reliant, though they don't like micromanagement. So they brought in all these new new facets of people management. Also, the Gen X are very, very tech savvy. They adapted to tech. They were not digital natives in the sense that they were not born during the digital explosion, but they adapted to this digital awareness. They adapted to this digital savviness very quickly, and today they are absolutely digital savvy and absolutely tech savvy
Yeah,
generations.
textile.
right? The next generation is the Gen Y or the millennials, who I think, most of you are, I'm sure, will be part of, some of you might be part of the Gen Y or the millennials who were born between 1981 to 1996. Now, there's not too much difference between the Gen X and the Gen Ys. Only thing is that Gen Ys have seen technology much faster in their lives or much earlier in their lives than the Gen Ys. Okay? So hence they could adapt to the digital world much faster. But one important thing about the Gen Ys or the millennials is that they form majority of the workforce today. And by 2025, they will form almost 3/4 of the world or global workforce. So they are a very significant lot, okay, the millennials. And the fourth generation are the Gen Zs, who are born between 97 and 2015. I think some of you might be part of Gen Zs, right? Now,
Yes, ma'am.
how are the Gen
Yes.
Zs? Yeah, yeah. So how are the Gen Zs different from the Gen X or the Gen Y? Gen Zs, you guys are digital natives. So right from your birth, you have been seeing this digital explosion. You have been born in with, into the world of iPods and iPads and iPhones and smartphones and wireless technology. So you don't need to try and adapt to digital savviness. You are born to that digital explosion. So you are all digital natives. However, since you guys are always connected, there is always this fear that you guys are overexposed to information. And that's why your attention spans are comparatively lesser than the Gen X and the Gen Ys. And hence, it has been seen that the Gen Zs need to be given immediate feedbacks because the attention span is lesser than the Gen X and the Gen Ys. All right? Don't take it against yourself. That's the way you guys are. When we were studying,
Ma'am, can you repeat the last line? What you
for
have
the
said? Yeah, yeah.
Gen Z, for the Gen Zs, what happens is since you guys are always connected, right? If you see your mobile
Yeah.
phones, one or the other app will definitely be open. Whether it's
Yeah.
a Facebook or a Twitter or a TikTok. So you guys are always, exposed to information. As a result, what is happening is since you're always connected, you're always exposed to information, you will there will be a shorter attention span. You guys get bored easily than us. All right. We still had
Yeah.
the maybe we had the patience to read big fat books. You guys may not have that patience. Maybe you like bite-sized information. You like information in chunk because your attention span is lesser. So as a result, what is happening is as managers, if I have to manage a Gen Z, I know that I have to give you immediate feedback because you may not remember what happened maybe 5 days or 10 days back. So these are the different, I would say, construct of different generations.
Yeah.
All right, making sense?
Yes.
Okay. Now, why do we need to be worried about these 4 generations in workplace? The reason is there is a lot of generational diversity. There would be clashing values and beliefs. There would be clashing work ethics. For example, maybe baby boomers and Gen Xers, they would like to have very defined working hours, 9 to 5. Then I'll go home and then I'll spend my time with my family. Whereas the Gen Ys and Gen Zs would realize that there is no such thing as 9 to 5 jobs. They would want more flexible office timings. They would want to work from home, or they would want to work from wherever they are comfortable at, because for them what matters is getting a job done. From where I'm doing or when I'm doing doesn't matter. All right, so these are clashing values. Then there would be some clashes in mutual understanding. So where the baby boomers or the Gen Xers would think that Gen Ys and Gen Z should respect me because of my experience and age, Gen Ys and Gen Zs think that respect should not come only because of age, but should come from the position of impact. If I'm creating that impact, I should get that respect. Whether I'm a 20-year-old or a 18-year-old shouldn't matter. So these are like, clash of understanding. Then there are different communication styles, So while the baby boomers or the Gen Xers are still very comfortable in getting emails, formal emails and formal maybe messages, the Gen Zs or the Gen Ys are the TikTok generation. Okay, you guys are the TikTok generation. So you guys need instant messaging. So for you, maybe a Yammer or a Skype or a MS Teams, where you can get instant messaging, where you'll ask a question and you get instant answer. These are your preferred communication styles. So since these four generations are dwelling in the workplace simultaneously, so there would be some clashes, which as HR professionals, we need to be cognizant of. We need to be aware of these impending clashes. Making sense, guys?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Now let me tell you one more talent reality. That is diversity and inclusion. So what do you think is diversity? Have you heard this term, diversity and inclusion?
Yes, ma'am.
So what do you think is diversity?
And the diversity is like a range of different things, like being diverse from others, state of being diverse.
Yeah, diverse in what sense? Diverse in what sense?
Getting distracted to something which you are not, which you shouldn't be. Like you are doing a certain thing, or you are into something, but you are distracted to other things.
Think about it. What is diversity?
Like, ma'am, as example, we can say that if a classroom is filled with students, but they are from different backgrounds, but they all are students, but background is different.
Correct.
That is where
So
diversity comes.
yes. So diversity means having varied backgrounds. Okay. So
Exactly.
what we mean by workplace diversity is understanding, accepting, and valuing the differences that exist among people. And those differences can be in terms of religion, in terms of gender, in terms of ethnicities, in terms of disabilities, in terms of sexual orientations. So the idea is that I am aware that you are different from me, and I accept it and I value our difference. And we can still coexist in the workplace. That's diversity.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm sure you have a diverse batch in your class, right? There are people
Yeah.
from different backgrounds, there are people from different ethnicities, there are people of different age groups, there are people
True.
who are of different religions, right?
Yeah.
True.
So that's a reality now. We will not have a homogeneous group, we'll have a heterogeneous group, and that's how the workplace will be. What is inclusion? So while diversity is understanding that we have differences, what do you mean by inclusion?
Inclusion means adding something.
Adding something, okay? So idea is, okay, I know that you're different from me. That's diversity. Inclusion is, I am still collaborative with you. I'm still supportive of you. I still respect you, and I include you in my group. That is inclusion. All right. So there's a very beautiful saying on, yes, there's a very beautiful saying on diversity and inclusion. Diversity is being, you have been invited to a party, and inclusion is you have been included in the dance. So diversity doesn't mean only acknowledging that you are there, but inclusion is also important, that I acknowledge you that you're different, and I respect that, and I want to collaborate with you. So you are part of my workplace. So that's diversity and inclusion. And Today, the whole world, globally, the corporate world, is driving diversity and inclusion. The reason is 56% of the companies that we have surveyed, strongly believe that diversity helps in innovation. Because just like we do not cater to a homogeneous customer, it's not like if I am a maybe a restaurant owner, I don't only cater to people who are youngsters, like say between 16 to 24. I cater to people of different age group. I cater to people of different ethnicities. I cater to people who have different food preferences, vegetarians, non-vegetarians, vegans, right? So just like my customers are not homogeneous, similarly, if I have a heterogeneous workplace, my understanding of customers will be much more intense. So I will be able to come up with much better solutions. That's why diversity and inclusion is very important. And also, if I see that I have an inclusive workplace that makes the employees feel valued, that will have a positive impact on the employees. And it has been seen that any workplace which is very diverse has much better retention rates. Okay?
Okay.
So are we good with this point?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, ma'am.
And let me now bring you to few more talent realities. One is company culture, emotional connect, values that match with personal principles. There's a very interesting book called Conscious Capitalism. If you ever get a chance to read that book called Conscious Capitalism by John Mackey, who is the owner of this company called Whole Food. Okay. Now, this conscious capitalism says that today business is not only about top lines and bottom lines. It doesn't matter. It doesn't only matter whether I'm making profit, how much revenues I'm making. Today, companies are looked upon beyond that. Today, companies are looked upon whether they are adding value, how much are they impacting the social, the society, whether they are conscious of the environment. All these things are, being closely looked upon by the not only by the customers, by the employees. And today, most of us, we want to get associated with an organization which has a deeper purpose. Somebody which doesn't only think about money, but thinks about the society, thinks about engaging the people around. So it's especially important that, while we want to attract new talents, we should not take the job as just a 9-to-5 job, but we should give much more value to the the newer talents. And as an employee also, I would like to work for an organization whose values, work ethics, and culture matches with my personal principles, right? So that's why, today, people in India, they don't want to work for companies like, say, say an Enron, or for that matter, companies which have impacted the society very negatively, or the companies which have created severe environmental damage. We don't want to get associated with those organizations, right? Because these organizations do not cater to our own principles. Are you with me on this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So new talents or top talents would not only look for the money or the perks and benefits that he or she is getting, but they will look beyond that. They will see what is the deeper purpose that this organization is driving. And I, as a talent, I would like to associate myself with an organization that kind of caters to the right purpose, that looks at the bigger picture. An organization which only doesn't think about money. All right, so that's again a talent reality. And the last but not the least talent reality is the virtual working community. Now, thanks to COVID-19, we now know that virtual working is a reality. It's a new normal. Going forward, many organizations would opt for virtual working. I won't be surprised if few of you may not ever go to a brick and mortar office. You may right from the beginning start working for a virtual office, because that's going to be the reality in the near future, because companies have already seen a lot of benefits in virtual working. Less office space requirement, less commuting for the employees, less business trips, shorter breaks. All those things will, actually impact the organization in the medium and long term. So virtual working is going to be the new normal. But there are pitfalls for virtual working. There can be security threat, like information security threat, because we are all working on our own individual networks. So we need to kind of think about these concerns. Also, another big concern of for virtual working is work-life imbalance. Today, just because we are home and we don't have to get ready and go to office, what is happening is the moment we are waking up, maybe we are just opening our laptop to see what all mails are there, and then we'll go and cook something, and then again come back and attend calls. So there is a complete work-life integration or inclusion or intrusion, whatever you call it. But this will, in the long run, will impact the mental health of employees. So virtual working comes with its pros and cons, and as HR professionals, we need to be aware of these realities. All right, are we good with this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Any questions, till now?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So if you are good with these talent realities, I will quickly give you some future trends that I am noticing in these 4 major tenets of talent management. Now, we know that talent management is much more than these, but because of the time constraint and I don't kind of overburden you with information, so we will stick to these 4 important functions of talent management. So let's first see talent acquisition. Okay. Now, some of the reality checks of talent acquisition is, today the demand for skills far exceeds supply. So if you look at niche skills like, say, automation, data analytics, if you look at niche skills like, say, the coding languages and all, if you look at niche skills like, say, environment scientists and all these things, these are very niche skills, and the demand is much more than supply. So there is already a battlefield where companies are fighting against each other to onboard these niche skills. So that's one reality. Second reality is, top talent expects to work with top talent. So if you have good talents in your organization, you must retain them to attract newer top talents. Because if I am a super performer, I would like to be associated with a super performer so that I can excel, so that I can learn more. So it's imperative that we retain our top talents and don't ignore them, and make it a reason for them to quit. So we need to be more protective about our in-house talent to attract external talent. The third is, today it's a candidate-driven marketplace. It's not a corporate-driven marketplace. Today, see, gone are those days when, say, an organization used to put a job requirement in their portal, and hundreds of people used to apply for those jobs. It doesn't happen this way anymore. Today, each one of us, we are creating or investing time in creating our own brands in platforms like LinkedIn, etc. Okay. So, is there a question? Sorry, I didn't get it. Okay, so what is happening is, we are our own brand ambassadors, and we are putting our our profile so well in LinkedIn. So companies are checking us up. They are seeing what kind of projects we are doing. They are seeing what kind of work we are associated with, and companies are marking us as potential talents. Okay, so it's a candidate-driven marketplace. I am driving my own brand value. Similarly, before joining an organization, I am not just going by the brand name of that organization. I will go to sites like Glassdoor to check what people have commented about that organization. If I see that despite being a top brand, people who have worked with this organization have nothing great to say about that company, I will think twice before even applying for a job in that organization. So platforms like LinkedIn, Glassdoor, these have made kind of everything very conducive to the candidate. So it's a candidate driven marketplace. And the fourth reality is that today, and I'm sure you guys will resonate with me, if you get a job, you will not only look at the compensation and benefits that you're getting, right? You will not see whether you're getting 10,000 more than your peer, or you're getting 25,000 more than your peer. What you will actually check is there a scope for me to learn something new? Will there be an opportunity for me to grow, right? Where will this job take me? Will I get an ecosystem that will support me to succeed? So I'm sure you will check all these things, right, before accepting an offer.
Yeah.
So it's very important that when you are trying to get newer talents in your organization, you need to keep these realities in your mind before you set out for talent acquisition. Now, how do we, keeping these realities in mind, how do we as corporates still kind of try and get newer talents? Now, before that, another reality check, that is today, I mean, there was a time, maybe I would say 10 years back, when the best way to getting recruited was to have a fantastic profile in Naukri.com or Monster.com or timesjobs.com. Yeah. So the recruitment companies or the consultants would have looked for your profile. They would have contacted you. They would have set the interviews. And if you crack it, fine. And if you don't crack it, then you will move on to the next one. But today, if you look at the statistics, more and more companies are relying on these job sites like LinkedIn, where they are displaying what kind of of course Naukri.com also gives you that scope to kind of showcase your talents. Employee referrals have become very important source of recruitment, because if I am recommending something, I am taking some amount of responsibility for that person, and companies prefer that. So I will not recommend somebody who I think is not going to sustain in this organization, or I will not recommend somebody who I think is pretty lousy at his or her job, right? But if I am recommending somebody, my reputation will also be at stake. So I will definitely recommend somebody who I think is worth that job, right? So employee referrals are becoming very important. Of course, the percentage that you're seeing on the screen, this will vary from industry to industry, but this is like in general the trend that we are seeing in terms of sources of recruitment. Now, having done these reality checks, let us see some of the best practices in talent acquisition. One thing that is coming out very clearly is that every organization should have an employer value proposition or a proper employer branding. So can anyone tell me what is employer value proposition or employer branding? Anyone wants to give it a try? Okay.
Ma'am, build up reputation.
Sorry, what was that?
Build up reputation.
Build up reputation of what?
Of your work.
Think more. I'm talking about employer value proposition, employer branding. Why do we need to brand something? Think of a consumer brand. We brand our products and services, right? We think about if we want to think about upmarket brands, we think about maybe a Levi's jeans, right? If you want to think
Yeah.
about a mid-segment brand, we think about maybe Flying Machine. And if it's okay to just wear any jeans, we are okay with non-branded jeans as well, right? But why these brandings and hence we are ready to pay more than 2,000 rupees for a Levi's jeans, and but we are not ready to pay more than 500 for a non-branded jeans, right? But for all you know, it's the same cloth, it's maybe the same style, but still depending on the brands, the brand proposition changes, right? Now,
Yes.
keeping that in mind, think about employer branding.
And ma'am,
Ma'am,
The profit.
right? Yeah.
ma'am,
Yeah, go ahead.
actually, yeah, ma'am.
Like customer satisfaction to maximize the profit of the industry or company.
Actually, ma'am, brand is looking for to make awareness about the uniqueness, style, fashion, among the consumer and to the target market as well.
Correct. So we brand something to attract people. You
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah, ma'am.
And that's why we spend so much of money to build a brand, so that customers feel attracted towards this brand and want to try it out. Similarly, we have to do the same kind of branding as an employer. I need to build a employer value proposition in such a way that my prospective employees will feel excited to work for me. Think about a Google. Think about the fantastic offices they have, the flexibilities that they give to their employees, the free food, the free gifts that they give to the employees, the branding that they do for their employees. All these things create a very snazzy, very peppy brand value for Google, and everybody wants to work for Google. All right. For that matter, think about brands like, say, Pepsi. They do so much of advertising for their own employees that people want to work for companies like PepsiCo, because they have created that brand. They say that, hey, if you work for us, these are the I would say the value that you can create for yourself. You would have complete clarity that what your role is, how you will contribute, how much you will gain as an employee. So all these things add to the employer value proposition. And every employer today not only should work towards building their brand for the consumers, but should also build their brands for attracting top talents. Making sense?
Yes, ma'am.
So how do we do this? Very simple, create your presence in social medias like LinkedIn and Facebook. Talk about what you are doing for the society. Talk about how your employees are gaining benefit. Talk about how you have made the workplace engaging for the employees, because every prospective employee will be looking out for these kind of messages, that which is what kind of company am I getting into. Are they kind of catering to the kind of work that, or the kind of growth that I am looking for? So you need to make your presence felt. The other one is leveraging employee ambassadors. Our existing employees are our best brand ambassadors. Just like, say, if you think about a good movie, maybe that movie might not have that huge budget to advertise themselves. Okay, so let me give you a very typical example. Say a Karan Johar movie of Kalank. Okay, how many of you seen this movie Kalank, which had
No
Varun
idea.
Dhawan and no idea? Okay, none of you have
Yeah,
watched
this.
Kalank?
No, I haven't.
Because I think the songs are better than the movie.
Yeah, song.
Yes, I have watched. I have watched.
Yeah, I
You
have
have
watched
you have
the
watched that?
songs only.
Okay. Okay, so good, but Karan Johar had spent crores of money to promote Kalank, but it was such a bad movie, and people didn't even watch it beyond the first week. Okay, so the word of mouth was very bad for that movie. Vis-a-vis, you think about movies like Badhai Ho. Badhai Ho did not have a huge advertisement budget. Okay, but think
Right.
about think about, or for that matter, Andhadhun. Okay, Andhadhun
Yeah.
barely had advertisements,
Yeah.
but think about
True.
it has made 100 crores, right? Why? Because of word of mouth.
Word of mouth,
I
the
have
content
watched
was
it because the content was good, because people who watched it in the first week were blown away by that movie, and people started speaking good about that movie, and more people started watching it. Same thing will happen if you leverage your employee ambassadors, who are already working for you. If you create their profiles, small videos of them in LinkedIn, and allow them to talk about how this organization has helped them in their journey of growth, help them learn, do meaningful work, that will attract newer talents. Because the newer talent will see that, hey, you know what, this organization not only just brands himself or herself, but gives so much of importance to their existing employees. They are getting given that pedestal to showcase their own talents and skills and talk about themselves. Don't you think that's going to be a fantastic way of getting new talents?
Yeah, ma'am.
All
yes,
right.
ma'am.
Yeah, I agree.
The other one is talent network. Talent network is something which is such a crucial thing, but unfortunately, just 37% of the Fortune 500 companies have something called talent network. It is nothing but create a platform where you will invite different kind of people to be part of that network, and you will keep on posting newer things about the industry, what your company is doing in that industry, how you are influencing people. So it's basically to keep yourselves alive among your prospective employees. But trust me, this talent network is so underutilized. Though 37% of the Fortune 500 companies have something called a talent network, you will be surprised to know only 8% of the companies send more than one mails per month. That means there's just no network. But this talent network can be fantastically used to allure your future employees. Something related is the candidate relationship management. If you know that in the future you would need some very good coders, and you are aware of some good coders who are already working for, say, a Google or a Microsoft or maybe a Airbnb, you can keep in contact with them and keep on kind of nurturing them. They are your passive employees who are not yet ready to be a part of your workplace, but keep them warm, keep that connect with them, so that if there is a requirement for a coder, you can immediately kind of get in touch with them and bring them in the system, because by that time they're already aware of what your company is, what kind of work your companies are doing, what kind of opportunities he or she will get. So you don't have to waste time, you can get these people immediately in your network. So this is called the candidate relationship management. Making sense, guys?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, now let me come to something called leveraging big data. What do you mean by big data? I'm sure you would know about big data since it's taught in MBA these days. So what do you mean by big data? What do you understand?
Data of the candidates, information.
And what else? So there are millions of data available from LinkedIn, Naukri, Monster.com, etc. What matters is how are we utilizing these data to put some predictive analytics to those data and see what kind of people will fit into our culture. So in the recruitment space, big data can be leveraged in such a way so that we would come to know, well, this person has worked in this kind of projects. If we bring him in our company, he would be able to deliver this kind of work. That's how we leverage big data. And recruitment or recruiting companies are utilizing big data in a big way. The last best practice that I want to talk to you about is how we are utilizing technology in changing the way recruitment is getting done. So there are numerous softwares which are available to facilitate talent acquisition. There are screening softwares like say Alio, which helps you screening thousands of resumes and bring it down to those which are absolutely meeting the mark or meeting the purpose. Then there are interview softwares like HireVue, Skills, etc. Which actually helps you schedule video-based interviews. So you don't have to be present as a recruiter to conduct the interview. You just send those questions, and the prospect has to participate in that interview through videos at his or her convenient time. Now, how it's going to help us is HireVue not only helps you capture that video, but will also give you analytics about his eye movements, whether he or she showed signs of nervousness. So all these things are important determinants as to whether this person will fit the bill or not. Now, there is one more very, very interesting way of hiring these days, that is including games and gamification in hiring people. So what you do is, if you are hiring somebody at a senior level, you actually put that person in a simulated environment and see how this person takes decisions, whether this person, how good is this person in acting under pressure, or how this person will react under specific conditions. So these are important determinants to the recruiter in analyzing whether this person will be able to work in high pressure job, whether this person is a good decision maker or not. So these are some of these important software or technology which can be leveraged in proper talent acquisition. Any questions so far? I think we're just left with 5 minutes, Amitabh. So is there a way to kind of maybe add 10 more minutes to it? Amitabh, you there?
Yes, I'm there. So students, if you have any question related to the topic of discussion today, so you may please ask.
No, I'm saying that can we have this discussion till around 12:10?
Sure, no issue, we can continue.
Okay. So these are some of the best practices of talent acquisition. Do you have any question, any comments to make?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, if that be so, then let us take one more function of HR, that is talent engagement and retention. Now, some of the realities of talent engagement and retention is that, there is a very famous, he has passed away. There was a very famous American psychologist called Frederick Herzberg. And according to him, the powerful motivator in our lives is not money. The powerful motivators in our lives are opportunities. Okay. And what are these opportunities? These opportunities are opportunities to learn, to grow in responsibilities, to contribute to others, and also opportunities to be recognized for the achievements. So today, a talent should be engaged in such a way that these opportunities